So when I got back to university that fall, I was totally drained, and I think beginning to feel the need to rebel. I realized that I had wasted a summer doing something that I hated because my dad was pushing me, and it was so. Anyway, I did. I couldn't concentrate. I I was still in pre-med. But the one good, I'll talk about basketball later, which was one of my salvations. But anyway, I ended up failing out of university. I failed 3 of the 5 courses. The only 2 courses I passed were English and psychology. The 3 science courses I was taking as part of pre-med, I failed miserably. And you can imagine how painful that was when the results came in. My mom got them. She naturally had to be the one to open the mail, and she handed it to me and said, "Well, I guess this is the end for you." Thank you, Mom, for your confidence. Anyway, in so many ways, my life was being seriously polluted by the fact that I had been taught to be obedient, and I couldn't break that. At that point, I couldn't break that control. So anyway, I got a job. The university said normally they would force you to stay out for 2 years if you flunked out. But they said because of your good record and because we realized there must be special circumstances, they said we will allow you back. But I wasn't prepared to go back, so I got a job and decided to go on a mission for the church. So I worked for 10 months and saved every penny that I made practically. And in January I took off on my mission.
56.
Yeah, I gave enough money to my dad to cover my expenses. We had to pay our own way in that context, and I went off to South Africa to convert the heathen, providing they weren't black, of course. Okay.
Do you want to keep going about your university career? Then you eventually went back
Well,
to
yes,
school?
maybe this would be a good time. I stayed out of university for 3 years. I was in South Africa for 2 years. I came back, and I went back to university. By this time, I knew that there was no way I was going to go and do pre-med. I loved English. I loved literature, and so I decided I'd be a school teacher, and I registered in some English courses. I was lucky at that point. I had enough science courses that I didn't have to do the required science anymore. And one of my English teachers, who was also a published poet, the first essay that I handed in, he called me into his office and he said, "You obviously have the potential to go a long way in this field." And he said, "I would like to invite you to come and be part of one of my graduate seminars, just as an auditor." And I said, "Well, yeah, gee, that was..." And then he proceeded to paint this wonderful picture of how satisfying life was when you were an English professor. So I went to I audited his course, and I started getting really good marks in English, and eventually I got a BA at the U of A, and then they offered me a teaching assistantship to work on an MA. So I spent 2 years getting an MA, and I started teaching English. And I discovered that I really liked it. I really enjoyed teaching English. So I stayed out of university for a year and just taught full-time as a teaching assistant. And then I cast around at various universities, and I got accepted in the PhD program at the University of Washington. By then I had 2 kids and a third one on the way, and we took off to Washington, and those were some of the best years. It was so exciting. It was just incredible. One every day was a discovery of some idea that was beautiful and that helped me understand myself and what was important in the world. And I was getting really good marks as well, and enjoying the teaching, except I had to deal with kids who were, boys especially, who were scared shitless that they were going to get drafted to go to Vietnam, and begged me to raise their marks. Those kinds of issues were just, they were so heavy and so horrendous. But I knew if I got involved in any way in being influenced with my marks, that was a no-brainer. I mean, I could have been in so much personal turmoil over that, because if I raised their mark, then some other kid was going to have to go fight in Vietnam. But it caused me to realize that there's something wrong here, and I started going to Vietnam meetings, listening to speakers, reading up, and I realized that that war was a wicked, wicked war, and that the U.S. had no business being there whatsoever. So it was an important force in forcing me to reassess my life and my values. The church that I was still belonged to was gung-ho about going to Vietnam. It was God's will and all that kind of stuff.